Okay, I want to talk about all this Epstein stuff, right? The Epstein files, the Epstein list. You hear a lot of people talking about it because there have been some major reveals as of late. Personally, I don't keep up with it too closely because it's like I've been new situation. If you somehow didn't know, by the way, Epstein was this financier who was wrapped up with intelligence agencies, politicians, celebrities, and a pedophilic sex trafficking ring. And so there's a lot of commentary coming out about his actions that has been coming out over the years. Recent release of a whole bunch of emails has really been fueling national and international discourse, because I think you have a lot of these conspiracy theorists who feel very vindicated by the reveals of some of this, right? They feel as if they were correct. The QAnon people somehow think that they were correct in this. The satanic cultist people think that they were correct in this with these conspiracies. I think many conspiracy theories have kernels of truth in them. I think that's how they grow, because they're able to take those kernels and expand in ways that make no sense. Just because an aspect of a conspiracy theory is correct does not mean that all the leaps of logic that it took to reach that conclusion are necessarily valid by default. The kernels of truth are like pieces of corn in you know what. And so then on the other side, you have the very real recognition, I think, that yeah, these systems, whether it be capitalism, statism, patriarchy, colonialism, racial hierarchy, and supremacism, they're all intertwined, deeply so. And that's the kind of understanding of this Epstein situation that I need people to be reaching at. Stop getting diverted into all these, I guess, rabbit holes about, which proportion of his client base were Democrats versus Republicans, and which Mesopotamian deity were they worshipping, and was it Baal or is it Moloch? Let's focus. Don't get caught up in this ridiculous. I don't have to tell my audience this. I would think not. For anybody else who happens to stumble in, don't get caught up in this conspiracy adult scapegoating and misdirection that ends up focusing on the Jews or Satanists or whatever. Like, you should absolutely be against Jewish supremacy, and especially the way that it manifests in Israel and is enabled all over the world. But it's not the only form of supremacy to exist. I think what I see is a lot of white people, white Americans, moving as if everything is the fault of Zionism and Jewish people, which is simply not the case. Only some of the things are the fault of Zionism, and it's not the fault of Jews as a whole. It's a fault of the portion of that population that subscribes to and supports that settler colonial and genocidal ideology, right? And it's a really weird, I think, double standard where these people, who I guess has become in vogue to be against Israel, rightfully so, but they're moving as if America is not as bad, if not worse. They're demonizing the IDF. They're talking about the IDF, how wicked the IDF is, and Mossad and stuff, but they're still glazing American soldiers. They're still talking about American soldiers as if we have to kiss the ground they walk on, respect the troops, thank you for your service, all these different things. As if American soldiers are not doing the same things that the IDF is doing in other parts of the world, historically and up to today. And the people who are acting like the US government is run by Israel, as if it's not like a mutual partnership of settler colonies. What I need people to understand is we need solidarity with oppressed people everywhere. I'm glad that people are partially waking up, particularly when it comes to the plight of the Palestinians. But I think that while a lot of necessary focus is placed on Israel, a lot of focus gets placed on them, and I think they get a lot of attention because their propaganda, their international image is not as strong, as powerful, or as effective as America's. America's PR, which is waning now, right, in this era, is so powerful. The cultural export of America, the image of America, the messaging of America that permeates the globe has, I think, obscured for some people, not everyone, a lot of people are aware of this, what America has been doing. The awareness that America has been doing what Israel has done for hundreds of years longer. Somehow, all of the Americans who are caught up in condemning Israel, not all of them, some of the Americans who are caught up in condemning Israel, somehow they're not seeing the parallels between their societies. They're still talking about, oh, there's a poverty draft in the US military, you can't really blame them, and yet they will spin around and, blame the IDF soldiers who are conscripted. I think both should be condemned, whether you're conscripted or not. Serving the empire, I think, is worthy of condemnation, regardless. My message, I guess, is that for those who have not fully woken up, wake up. Don't turn a blind eye to the things that are tangentially implicating you, I suppose. That's part of the issue, right? You have, I think, a bit more proximity to American soldiers, the Americans who I think are still caught up in that, condemning the IDF but not the US Army. They have more proximity to the US Army, so that it's easier for them to see justifications and excuses and all these different things, right? But don't let that proximity, that closeness, prevent you from standing up for what is right, you know? Palestinians are not the only people who are suffering. The IDF is not the only perpetrator of harm in the world. Please keep talking about Palestine. Please keep focusing on the suffering, the genocide taking place there. But understand that this problem is big, much bigger than Israel and the IDF and Palestine. I appreciate the Epstein circle is being exposed for what they are, but let's not lose sight of the way that I think abuse and violence and exploitation permeates every aspect of the system. People are picking and choosing certain abusers to fixate on and to condemn. I think now is a great time to expose the system as a whole, top to bottom, right? Be consistent in your values. Have values that you can be consistent in. Don't just follow the trend and say, oh, well, you know, people are talking about this, so let me focus on this. I think it leads to the creation of these double standards because you haven't fully internalized a value system that will allow you to be consistent, right? Expose the Western imperialism and the Western depravity happening around the world, but also recognize that this depravity goes beyond the West. It is the depravity of patriarchy, and that depravity is prevalent in societies besides the West. It's prevalent in far too many societies. Islamic societies, tribal societies, Eastern societies, Soviet societies, Western societies, all these societies, many of these societies have this kind of patriarchal violence, this ancient patriarchal system built into them that is enabling this abuse, this violence, this exploitation of children, of women, of people as a whole. The problem is not limited to the Zionists and the West. I think the sooner that we can have a more holistic awareness of the nature of this beast, rather than a selective awareness of certain manifestations, certain heads of the Hydra, the sooner I think that we can fight it collectively. Yeah, people use the poverty excuse to join ICE. And that's a problem I think that I see is because people are closer to the violence that ICE perpetrates, it's very easy for them to condemn ICE and to backtalk ICE. But some people are so submerged in American propaganda and American exceptionalism that they won't see that it's just the imperial boomerang. You know, it's just the violence of abroad coming home. And rather than recognizing that, they only focus on the violence that affects them. That sucks. I used to think higher things about sexism in society, like maybe it just divides the workloads, but post Epstein I really see it as a system dangerous people implement to enable their behavior. Yeah, patriarchy goes deep. You know, it's not like, oh, we abolish capitalism and all the other problems go away. The problem with patriarchy, I think, will be a generational battle, and it's up to us to lay that groundwork, to step up and carry on that fight, because people have been fighting against it. Let your love for the oppressed be greater than the hatred of the oppressors. Agreed. Patriarchy is just one of the many hierarchies, isolating everything to just patriarchy distracts from it being a problem hierarchy itself. I'm not isolating it to just patriarchy at all, but patriarchy is one of the earliest and most entrenched hierarchies, and it supports many of the others. You know, you look at how capitalism functions. Capitalism requires, historically, patriarchy to function. You know, the unpaid domestic labor of women had to be exploited to keep this whole system chugging. And I mean, some people's solution to that is, oh, pay women for their domestic labor. I think that's a band-aid solution, but I don't want to get into all that. Yeah, no, that's not what I meant. I mean, patriarchy, I think, is sometimes under-discussed, and I really wanted to highlight it in relation to the Epstein conversation. Not to say people aren't talking about it in relation to the Epstein conversation, but I wanted to put in my 2 cents about it and really emphasize that these hierarchical systems, patriarchy included, patriarchy principally, what enable this kind of exploitation and abuse across societies, you know, and a consistent value system has to condemn such abuse regardless of its source, regardless of its scale.